Hey everyone, this is Daniel, and in today's video, we're going to talk about Power App's Racing Scoreboard Canvas app. Now, this is about a fun app that I had to build for a few people that I know because amongst themselves, they had a fun, friendly competition that is going on, and they needed a way to keep track of the score and also to display it in a fun, animated, and a dynamic way. And I say dynamic because the scores can change, and so the app and the animation should reflect that. So I had a lot of fun building with it. Ran into a few challenges, and I want to reflect and show you all of that with all the controls that I use, the formulas that I had over there, and how the animation all work. So stick around, there is a lot to learn over here. But first, here's my intro video. So let's get started and let's jump right into the demo. This is the racing scoreboard app that I talked about, and this is what it shows. It's basically racing because I've got cars over here that are going to race across each other. So let me actually go and now start the competition. I'm going to click on this button over here, and as you can see, these cars are racing. What's interesting is some are going fast, some are going slow, and at the end, you can tell which of them have actually reached the finish line. So on the top of it is Average Joe's, and over here, the Cornfield Ghost, they have reached 100%. They've actually completed the race. But then there were some of them which went a little slow. And at the end, you can even see which one of them have actually got how much ranking left. Some of them have got 50% left, some of them have completed 80%, so on and so forth. Also in the app, you can always come back and click on this again, and the race starts all over again, just in case somebody got excited and they want to see this all over again. This is the app that I built for a friendly competition. Now I'm going to walk you through how I built it. So the first thing I want to show you is the data source. And because all of the users who are directly affected by this app, or also those who are coming and viewing it, were all SharePoint users, I went and used SharePoint as the backend data source. And so for that, I went actually here. This is a SharePoint site that I have. And as you can see, the list and the data is very simple. And just to make sure, let's go to the list settings so you can actually see the column types that I used over here. And the most important ones are basically the title. That's the default column that comes along with it. Score, I went ahead and put it as a number type. And just to be sure, went in and I kept the number of decimal places to 0. That just made the calculation a lot more easier. So go back out one more step away in the settings. And then the captain. The captain, I kept it as the people or the group one because I should be able to go ahead and get the information which is directly there from Office 365 users. I don't want to spend time typing in the email address and all of that. I can just pull that directly from the Office 365 users. And who knows, in the future, I might have to send out some email notifications. I already have all that information in. And then the ID, well, the ID column is automatically put in by the SharePoint list. So that saved me some work. And there you go. It is simple, that simple. And basically all I had was to put in 2 new columns, the captain and the score. Everything else was out of the box. And then I just made ahead and made sure that I actually entered the data in. In fact, I already had the data ready in the SharePoint list. After the fact, I went and created the app. So this is the backend data source. It's on a SharePoint online list. So we are in Power App's Canvas app in the designer section. And this is what the finished product looks like. This little section over here where the actual animation happens, there's some calculation involved. That's the one that I'll build from scratch with you. So you can see that there's some calculations involved. But as an overview, here's what it is. I have 2 screens. It's the main screen and then there is the view and edit screen. I won't be emphasizing any of this one because this is just a gallery. This is just an edit form. And then based on what you selected, the edit form will allow you to update that. This is where people can actually go and update the score. That's the only thing over here. So therefore, the view edit screen, I'm going to skip that. The one that I want to focus on is the main screen. So the first thing you see is that I do have a container. I did that so I can try and make it more responsive right up front. Now, I didn't spend too much time on the responsiveness, but I've already done at least the fundamental work, which is started adding everything inside containers. So let's go and expand this. The first thing you see is a container. Now, I've got a container and I've actually hidden it. Key thing about the container is I set the duration to 5,000, which basically gives me 5 seconds. And for that duration, I did everything automated. And I'll walk you through that in just a minute. Next, I've got these other 3 containers. So the top section over here, it's got as a header. Then I've got a footer, which is right here. And then I've got the body. Now, body is where most of the work happens. So I expand the body, and as you can see, now I have a gallery. So that should be a tip for you that all of these things are galleries, and each of them is a section of a gallery. So now that I expanded, you can actually see that there is the score section over here. That is something which basically at the end, you see when it completed, it tell me how much percent it was. Well, this is the score section. Then I went ahead and added this container. Keep that at the back of your mind, because when I'm going to walk you through it, this is one which solved a big problem, a complication that I had, and I solved it by using that container. And then there is the subtitle, which is basically the numbering of them, the 1, 2, 3, all the way 8. That came from the ID column of the SharePoint list. And then there's the title. This is the title of all the teams. As you can see, these are fictitious names. So that's basically the data score over here. This is where most of the magic happens. So it's under the container. And in the container, now I've gone ahead and actually put the image. I also put a little bit more design. Like all of this is coming directly from each and every controls to add more design. I did it at that level. You can also just put in images and that'll work just as fine. I just went detail by detail to getting all this environment. And then I also went and added these icon groups. Icon group, again, more icons over here to make it more detailed. But the key thing is this image. And in the image, the one that is changing the most is the X value. See, this is the X value. This is that magic formula. So now that you've seen this overview, let's go and build another simple app. And I want you to focus purely on this section, is how the animation works. So now I've gone ahead and created a fresh Canvas app. I went and did the tablet design and also made a connection to that SharePoint list. And then I went and saved the app. That's all I've done. I just went and did these 3 fundamental things so I can just save us some time in this video. But now we're going to start building it. So in the demo that I showed you, the first thing I actually did was I came up to the plus sign and I went to the layout, and on the layout, I went and got this container. This container is the first thing that I put over there. So now that it shows up, you can actually see that it's under screen as container. I usually name it as the same way as the screen. So for example, in my app that I just showed you, the screen was called as main screen. So the naming convention for the container became MS, which stands for a main screen, and then container. This is something that I practice. You can do it post as well, because I do it as a pre. I put the MS as a pre. You can put that as container MS, but just do something. Start getting to that habit. And now I'm going to go and expand it all. I'm going to manually do it, but after I've done this, I actually click over here. I come on I click over here, and now I'm going to actually type in app.design_width. That's what I'm going to do. And then the same thing, I'm going to come over here and click on height. And then here, I'm going to type in app.design_height. And so now I've made it responsive enough. So again, I am not going to emphasize too much on the responsiveness. In fact, in all honesty, the app is not very responsive, but I've gone ahead and at least done this for making it easier for future responsiveness, right? So this is just the first one. All right. Next thing, came on over here to the insert, go to the gallery, and I'm going to drop this vertical gallery over here, because that's where basically the main amount starts. And the beauty is that moment I drop the gallery, it's telling me, hey, this is the connection that you already have in your app. Do you want to go and use it? Yep, I'll go and use it. It actually does a really good job by already going and providing everything I have. So I'm going to go ahead and expand this all the way, right? So for now, I won't going to pay too much attention on the responsiveness. Just went in and filled this up. Now I attached all the images to my SharePoint list. If I click over here on an item, you can actually see that I've got these attachments, these PNG files over here. So how do I go ahead and get that over this image? Because I don't want to upload these images manually. For that, here is the trick. You want to reference this item.attachments, but this item.attachments behaves like a table because you can put multiple attachments in the SharePoint list. But because we only added one attachment, I want to get the only, that is the first attachment. So here's the formula. I'm going to type in first, and I'm going to say this item, attachments, close it, and then put dot value. And the moment you do that, it'll go and grab this over here. You can also go and put in the dot absolute URI. You can do that, and that'll get the image. In fact, absolute URI is the recommended one to go and do it. All right. So now I've gone ahead and gotten the image. So let's kind of move things around a little bit. See, it's already responsive. So I'll just move this one to the top, make that a little smaller. Just put in just enough. Put the numbers over here on the top. So this at least looks very similar to the finished product that I showed you. Move this one over here because I want to make sure I can see all 8 of them over here, because you remember there were 8. So at least I went and got all 8 of them. All right, this is good enough to start with. A couple of things I don't need, so I'm going to remove it. I don't need this one, so I'll go ahead and remove the delete sign. This separator, don't need that, so I'll go ahead and delete it. And that is basically all there is over here. Simple as that. So I've got all the design controls that I need, which is the image and the text. Now I need to start adding in the animation controls over there. So when I first had this discussion and I was getting an overview of what they wanted, when I heard about the point that, hey, I would like to add some animation to the score, the first thing that came to mind is slider control. I was like, yes, I can do this as a slider control. In fact, I've actually done a video similar to how I can use a slider control for keeping track of another score. This is where I'm going to use the slider control as well. So I'm going over here, I'm going to go to the inputs, and on the inputs, you actually scroll down a little bit, and this is the slider control that is right there. So clicking on that. Now make sure that your slider control drops inside the gallery, because if you just notice what happened to me, it went and dropped it inside the container, not inside the gallery. So I'm going to click on this ellipsis, I'm going to click on cut, then just click on somewhere inside the gallery. In fact, you can come over here and click over there, and I'll do a Control V, and now it is fallen inside the gallery. This is basically how it works. So now I'm just going to go ahead and kind of situate it in a place I would like it to be. So what I do is I like where these cars are sitting. In fact, let me just move the car just a little bit up. In fact, it's too big because it's even going past the location of the gallery item. So I'm going to make my card a little smaller. And now I'm going to situate the control, the slider control. So I'll make it right up to about here. That's good. Don't worry, we're going to make this invisible. The visible will be set to false, but at least I want to go and get all of this done over here. So that is the slider control. Second thing that I just talked about already is the timer, because I've got the slider control, which is going to do the animation. I got to get the timer control, which is now going to control the animation. Same thing. I come back to the insert, I go to the input, and on the input, I usually have to scroll all the way to the bottom, and there you go. That's the timer. And so now we've got the timer as well. Now here's the thing. The timer doesn't need to be multiple ones. So the timer, I can actually delete that one. I can go click on the main screen, click on the input again, scroll all the way to the bottom, and go get my timer. This is going to be an independent timer, one by itself, so I can just keep it out like that. So let's keep focusing on the button for a while, specifically all its properties. Now the default duration of this timer button is 60,000. Well, I don't need 60,000. I do need 5,000. Now the 5,000 is a sweet spot for me because you saw the demo and the 5,000 worked just fine. Next thing is I'm going to be hiding the button, but I do need the timer to kick off automatically when some other icon is clicked on. Well, let's just go get an icon then. So right back on the insert tab on this ribbon over here, I'm just going to randomly go and grab an icon. So the plus one is good. So I'll just go randomly grab that and I'll keep that somewhere on the top right so we can actually keep seeing it. That's good. But now, because I'm using something else and not the button, you guessed it, I got to go and use a variable. But where exactly does that variable apply to the timer control? That's a good question. What happens is in the timer control, when we go take a look at the properties, we need to go and focus on the start. Specifically right here is like something needs to tell the button to start. And that's where we're going to use the variables. So here, back to the icon on the on start, I'm going to go ahead in the on select, I'm going to go and add two more variables. So here's the first thing. I'm going to go and start with set. I'm going to use the set function, which is a global function. I'm going to call it as var timer, and I'm going to set that to true. That's the first thing. All right. So now I've gone ahead and set that. So when we actually come over here to the control and I go and click on that, it is going to set the timer to true, which means now when I come back to this timer control, in its start property, go ahead and just change that to var timer, which means when I click on it, it'll go ahead and start. That's the first thing that you got to do is make sure you change this property. The other property that we want to focus on is called as the on timer end. So I'll just scroll up over there so you can see it. Is on the on timer end. I want to go ahead and now reset the value of the var timer back to false. Because let's think about that. When I come over here, I'll click on plus, things will start happening, and then when it reaches the end, I want it to automatically set the value of that the value of the timer back to false. So basically, you could just come back over here and just type in set, and you type in the var timer, comma, false. And so we've gone ahead and actually done that. To be sure, the other thing you can also do is coming back to the main screen. Right on the main screen, on visible, go ahead and set that same value as well, which is the set var timer. Come back over here and set that to false. This is kind of like a catch-all that just in case you had multiple screens and you're coming back to the screen, you want to set the var timer back to false because the false is going to be the good starting value of that var timer variable. And therefore, just because you came to the screen, you've already gone and reset everything back to where it should be. So we took care of the variable, right? Which means that if I click on this timer should start automatically. And just to test it, I'll go on the play. I'm going to click on this one. and any second now. There, see, the timer automatically started over here, and now it should be 5 because we've only set it for 5,000. And now that we've come to the end, it'll automatically set the var timer back to the false. This is proof that we are actually now going to use that. We don't have to manually select the timer. A very important thing that we've done over here. In fact, it's not a bad idea to just drop a label. We can go and put a small label somewhere up over here, and I'll go ahead and change that to the var timer so that we can actually see what's going on. And in fact, let's just put this in, var timer. I'll put a space, close it, and I'll put an ampersand so that we can see exactly both what is happening. So if you go back over here and click on preview right now, or do a test, right now the value of the timer is false. I'll click on this, it changed it to true, the timer began, it's going to finish all the way to the 5. Once it hits 5, it's set back to the false. All the settings that we did is successful because we just proved it over here. Now I want to switch over to the slider function. Now in the demo that I showed you, you saw that the scores were things such as 50 or 75, 2 of them were even 100. As you can see, it is a percentage. And therefore, I need to actually manipulate the score value, its minimum and maximum, to reflect that. So I'm going to click back on the score, and as you can see, the minimum is 0, the maximum is 100. It already went and gave me what I want, but for some reason, if it doesn't, go ahead and set it as that value. Your minimum should be 0, your max should be 100, and that will actually help it to be aligned very well. Next, I need to change the default value because the default value is automatically 50. I want the default value to come from the SharePoint list. And just to be sure, here's the SharePoint list, and its score is coming from the score column. So now I go by Power Apps, I'm on the slider. In the slider's default property, I'm going to type in this item, which is right here, this item dot, and select score. Now you'll see it automatically changed it. See the 2 of them, which was for hundreds, they came over here. The slider has now, the scrolling point of the slider, that has already reflected, and now it has matched from this SharePoint list. So if your wheels are already turning, you have understood that, okay, what my goal is that this image, this car image, it needs to align to the handle of this sliding one. And you guessed it, that is what we have to do. And trust me when I say this is the biggest challenge that I faced, because all I had to work with are the Y coordinates. So if I go and now click on this image, the only way I can dictate where this thing goes is the Y coordinates. And you know where the challenge was? This handlebar, there is no property or no setting over here which tells me the X value of that handlebar. There's nothing. Please, if you find it, let me know, because I have searched through the properties, I've searched through the advanced. I can go and set the value, I can go and change the coloring, but I do not know what is the X value of that handle. And to think about it, it's not an easy data that they can just give it to you, because I might be able to move the handle, I need to relocate it. The X value will constantly keep changing, and therefore they just haven't provided that yet. So I need to be able to find a way to do that. And the easiest way for me to control that was putting it in a container. So let's do that. So I'm going to come back over here on the plus, and in the plus, I'm going to go and put in this input. And in this input, I'm going to click on this container. Now we just got to make sure when you go back over here on the top that this container needs to be inside the gallery. That's perfect. Now this container, you want to go ahead and actually align it to a very specific place right over here. Align that over there, and you can tweak this around, but this is going to be the exact container. Inside this container is where we're going to have the slider control, and that is where we're going to also have all the other things, including the image. So I'm back over here, slider control. I'm going to click on the ellipsis. I'm going to click on cut. And then I'm going to click on the container in the ellipsis, and I'm going to click on paste. Same thing, image. Click on the ellipsis. I'm going to click on cut. I'm going to click on container, ellipsis. I'm going to click on paste. So not a whole lot of things I guess happen, but we're all in. We've already gone ahead and actually put all the information in. We are now ready for the next one, which is the formula. But what is this error, Daniel? So let's click on this error, and now it's actually telling me the select parent one. Well, I'm just going to delete that because I really don't need it in the on select. This is automatically happening. And that was the only error I actually noticed. Everything else inside the container worked. Like this item, the formula that we had to do to get the image from the attachment, it all went through. All the locations worked. All I got was that one error on the on select, but we deleted and we're good. So now we need to focus our attention on the image, specifically the X value of that image, the X property. So I'm going to click on this image now over here, and on the image, I'm going to click on this X property. If you see, all of them are at 60, so it's the same thing, but all of them need to reflect what is the actual handle value, which over here varies based on each of these items. So here is the most important formula of this entire video, and this is the one that took the most time. So check this out. What I've got to do now is use a combination of the entire slider width, the value, and the max of that. And then I'll also go ahead and do a division to get the property. But this is the combination. So check this out. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually just come in and just let me change this value over here to slider, so I don't have to keep adding the one. All right. So now I'm going to click on it again, which is the image right there. I'll change the image to 1 as well. What the heck? So I'll click on the image. Now in the image, back to the X property, and this is the formula that I want you to start typing in. So it is the slider and the slider dot width, the entire width of the slider. So the moment I put that in, you see how all the cars moved over there, all the images. That's perfect. Things are moving along. Times, which is the asterisk, times slider dot its value. All right. So now it just disappears. We're still fine. All right. We're still fine. Divided by the slider dot and go and get max. That's the one. And see, the moment you do this, it goes ahead and factors in exactly the value of the handle that we use. See, it's already starting to make sense. But I don't want it to always be this way. I want it to have that dynamic animated view. And for that, we use the timer, because ultimately what I want is I just want the end result to be this value. But how do I get it? Well, what I do is I will go ahead and use the timer value divided by the actual max of that timer value. So here's how it is. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put down my asterisk, and I'm going to say timer, which is the name of the timer, is my timer 2. I'm going to get timer 2 dot its value, which is right here, divided by 5,000. I just went and put that in over here. All right, let's got that in. So now see, it returned back to the original place. But check this out. If I go and now click on play, and if I hit on this button, you are getting the timer effect. See, the timer is running up to 5 seconds, and this is how it works. Because this timer value actually now goes ahead and eventually, when the value reaches the max, which is 5,000, that value becomes 1, and I get the max value over there. This is how that animated effect works. So now that you've noticed, we've got all of this done, which means there's a few things we can do. First of all, we will have to go ahead and increase this a little bit more, the container, so we can actually see all of this image. So we come back in, I'll just click on the button for now. And now all the cars or the vehicles are moving. But because we've gone ahead and expanded the container, we should be able to see all the cars. So tweak around the width a little bit, however you see fit. But guess what? We don't need the slider control anymore. We need it, we just don't need to see it anymore. So you can come in over here, click on the slider control, turn that invisible. Same thing over here, button, we still need it, we do not need to see it. Click on it, go and click on invisible. And so now when users come in, they're just going to click on whatever button it is. When you click on that, it gives them this amazing animated effect. They have no clue what's happening in the back end. They don't know we use variables. They don't know if we're using a timer. They don't know we're using a slider. But it works and it looks really awesome. Now I want to go back to the one that I've already built so we can actually do some finishing touches. So if you see over here, when I went ahead and ran this one, the app in the finishing one, right at the end, there was the actual amount. Like, okay, these ones were at 100%, this was at 70%. Well, how did you do that? And why was it so dynamic from its visibility standpoint? So let me just show you that. So when I click on the text over here, you see that it's getting, the text is actually this item dot score and percent. The reason I do that is because the SharePoint list, it only gave me numerical values. So I wanted to show a percentage. Therefore, I went ahead and did it this way. All right. So I went and actually added that text, which was this item dot score, and then I went and put the percent. But then how is the visible and the non-visible working, Daniel? Well, if you haven't already guessed, I've used variables for that in the visible property. So in the visible property for this text right here, if I scroll all the way to the bottom in the visible property, it is dictated by the variable score. So how am I getting that? Great question. It's all again dictated by these two things. So imagine when we were building it from scratch, you saw me put in the var timer comma true. Over here, when it is being clicked, I'm making sure that I have the set var score. That's the variable that is used to hide or make it visible or invisible for this percent over here. I'm setting that variable to false. So it's a switch. I went ahead and on this on select, the timer's variable becomes true, the var score becomes false. I know what some of you who've been doing this for a while, you said, Daniel, why couldn't I just put in a exclamation and then the var timer? Hey, that would have also worked. Because I'm using this app to go and teach you, that's why I left it as two separate apps. You could literally have used the same app in places where we went ahead and actually did the var. If you for here, put in the exclamation var and it'll be the opposite, all right? And then over here for the actual timer. Let's go back to the timer because we need to be able to manipulate this variable again. So on the timer, in the on-end timer, when I was building it from scratch, you saw me on the on-end to make the var timer comma false. Also go ahead and add the set var score comma true. That's the var score. Okay, so you switch it and then just make sure that back over here for that percent sign, go ahead and add that as visible. So that's the important one that I wanted to show you before I finish this. And then other than that, the design is completely up to you. And as I had shown you in the introduction, you see how I went ahead and really manipulated. Let me just zoom in so you can actually see all the jazz that I've done over here. Each of these are actually icons. So if I go in and click over there, you can actually see that each of them were actually an icon that I selected. Little rectangle ones over here. Again, I just put in some extra work over here. You could just put in an image, a nice image that you have. Same thing for these ones over here. All of these were actually just icons. Same thing. I use the icons. You can go ahead and put in another image. But this is what the finished product looks like. It worked so well, and I was able to do all of this thanks to Power Apps Canvas app. I had so much fun building the original production one and this demo for this video. And a few important key takeaways that you want to remember is first, the slider control. The slider control is what actually dictates the animation. Remember the handle of the slider control? That's what you need. And remember to set the start and the end from 0 to 100. Then the timer control. We set the high of the timer control to 5,000 because that gives us just the amount of animation that we need. And you've got to go ahead and signify the start property and then the end property. And over there, we're going to use variables. And finally, the icing on the cake, which solved a lot of my problems, was the container. Make sure the animation, which is the image, and the slider control are inside the container, and all your X values will just start to make sense. So hopefully this video was helpful. And as always, keep using Power Apps. Hey everyone, hopefully you found this video useful. And if you did, can you help me help you? Can you subscribe to this YouTube channel? Because remember, I provide fresh content on a weekly basis and it's 100% free. So if you have subscribed, thank you so much and pass the word. But if you haven't, subscribe, click on the bell notification and let the learning begin.